Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, the most important 90 minutes of your day. Hello, I'm Michael, the MC and Opportunity Ambassador for today's show. And today's show's title is Do You Have the Sense to Know Your Senses? We're going to talk about your senses today. And there may be more than you think. But with
Or
me
less
today are my
than
fabulous co-host, Agnieszka, our psychosomatic illuminator,
How many senses do you have? Hmm?
and Dennis, our freedom facilitator.
Greetings and blessed love, everybody. Great to be with you.
And Dennis promised us that today he's going to pay attention to the chat box very closely, so he won't miss any of your messages.
Did I last week?
No, you were like, oh, we've been talking for 5 minutes.
I will.
Yes.
Well, the subject that we're going to be talking about today was something that I just happened to witness in a video, and I'm trying to remember the gentleman's name. It was David something, David Martin, I think is his name, and he produces a video that I think it's like Butterfly of the Week or something like that. I'm not positive on what his podcast is, but in that podcast, he talks about people being conditioned to not be aware of their own senses, and that most people think of the five senses as being the primary senses that they experience the world with, but he had 12 senses. And in fact, as I searched this up on the internet, I found that there's people that believe that we've got 14 senses and maybe 21 senses and maybe
Or
32
77.
senses. Yeah, so there's a lot. There's potentially a lot more senses, which suggests also that there's a lot more awareness that we could be aware of. And so I thought this might be a great subject matter to cover today, since we were a little light on what we were going to do in regard to
Right?
what the
We're,
show is going to be about today.
we're just moving, that's all. No, so I looked up.
So, what are your feelings on that?
I looked up your original idea of the 12 senses, and I found that it was Rudolf Steiner that came up with the 12 senses to start with. And I have his drawing here. I can share my screen and show you guys.
Sure, let's do that.
Share. I can do this really. Dun, 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 dun. So as you can see here, we have this drawing, and I think this drawing is original by Rudolf Steiner. And it has a sense of speech, inspirations tinged with inner experience, a sense of hearing, inspirations, a sense of warmth, imaginations tinged with sympathy and antipathy. That's interesting. We don't even use the word antipathy in sentences these days, right? So sense of sight goes towards imagination. Sense of taste, imaginations tinged with materiality. How cool is that? And then we have sense of smell, touch, balance, movement, sense of light, sense of ego, which is intuitions tinged with essential reality, sense of thought, which is also intuitions. And that's the whole thing. I just went around the whole circle. Of course, I didn't start at one, but you know.
Well, I noticed that on the bottom there's like there's kind of like a dark area. Is that like the inside versus the
That's just
outside, or what?
conscious. That would be how they would
The
draw the subconscious.
conscious and subconscious. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because sense of light, sense of movement, sense of balance, sense of touch, and sense of smell. If you don't control them, we can't turn off a sense of smell, you know?
Yeah. Interesting.
I don't know if we can turn off a sense of thought either, though, but we can try. Then it can
I think
fun with the divine. Right, Dennis?
Sorry, say that again. I couldn't hear that.
I said that we can't stop our thoughts. Like our thoughts are conscious, but we try to stop it, but we have a hard time. But you, because you're so much one with the divine, you can stop your thoughts probably like that.
Really?
Right?
Am I more one with divine than you are?
Well, you talk about it more.
Do- Does that make a difference?
I don't know. Does it? Oh, Guru, tell me, Guru. Does it? No?
What do you think?
That just makes you sound like a real guru, you know. Everybody, get Dennis to work with you one-on-one if you want to have the sense of the divine palpable inside you.
Not sure if
No.
that's needed to connect with that really. But of
So-
course, I'd be much honored.
So Dennis, when it comes to this idea
Mhm.
of 12 senses versus 5 senses, what are your thoughts on that?
I really haven't heard about it before. It sounds really interesting, and I think Steiner definitely he coined so much, and like his work is amazing in itself. So that in itself does make me interested in what he has to say about that. And did you go further into it? Like, did you research some of the background and some of how he came to his conclusions about that subject?
That I did not do. I did watch a video about how, like, society in particular is being desensitized. And in fact, like with what's going on now, we're losing more of our senses through these, restrictions that we have. And so to some degree, we are getting to the point that everything that we experience is artificial in some way, shape, or form. And to me, that is certainly something that we need to be aware of, because we are making, they're making choices for us, or the multinationals and the people that are providing products to us, are making decisions, and we're purchasing and making these, we're allowing these products into our lives that are artificial in nature. And certainly when we hinder our own senses or don't use our own senses, the potential for us to lose the awareness of what is possible, because I think, like any of our senses, I do a little exercise where I ask people to like close their eyes and just like navigate their surroundings and see how difficult it is when you don't have a sense of sight. But then if you think of your other senses and how those are being neglected, what are we losing when we don't have a acute sense of hearing, when we don't understand like what things feel like, or like when we walk outside, do we know, like, is it hot, is it humid, do we know those things, or are we just like, it's disgusting and I don't want
How
that?
do we know it's humid? It's our skin that tells us it's humid, right? So is humid
Yeah.
a sense of touch? Or
Well, I imagine that would be,
It really is through our senses that we perceive the perceived reality that we're moving in, right? And so through our senses we translate the stimuli that we're getting from our world. And it's I think it's very telling if you look at how the words are being used, and in which words the word sense, in German it's actually called der Sinn. So sinnhaft, so it would be SINN, and it's really interesting if you go into the etymology of the word, and how we use the word Sinn in German, Sinn, or sense in English, in different words, and how we can kind of perceive how important that actually is. And on one hand, it is how we determine the reality, and whether it's hot or cold, or dark, or there's light, and the different ones we just mentioned. But in the same moment, those senses also can be tricked, or we can be tricked into our perception, the seeing of our eyes can be, there's all different kind of experiments where you can trick your eyes into seeing something that is not there, or all know those pictures where you can see the old woman or the young woman at the same time. And so it's interesting to see how we can be easily how we say it, I don't find the English word for it, tricked into seeing something that's not there, and how different people or different viewers would see different things depending on what they're focusing on. So it's interesting that we perceive our world, yet at the same time we might perceive the same thing or the same image differently depending on what time of the day or what mood or from what angle we're looking at it. And also 2 or 3 different persons may perceive the same thing totally differently. So it kind of gives a hint at how reality can be perceived in different ways, and how we can all be here yet perceive things and situations and our surrounding in totally different ways, because we're translating it based on our own interpretation of the input that we're getting through our senses.
Yeah, and I think that translates also, like what you said about like the being tricked. Certainly when we are experiencing artificial forms of our senses, like even with just walking, with shoes on, people don't necessarily sense the ground that they're actually walking on. They don't understand like how their body functions and balances on the surfaces. And of course, if you wear shoes all the time, you get a tenderfoot kind of circumstance where you can't even really walk on the surface, walk on a lot of surfaces that otherwise you probably could if you weren't always wearing shoes. And so, like, is the experience changed because you're doing something like wearing shoes instead of walking on your bare feet? And then what is the benefit of that we're giving up by wearing shoes? And are we just caught up in the shoe trend for a reason that really doesn't, because like certainly where I live here in Acapulco, I don't need shoes. I can live barefooted if I want. Of course, there are some possible problems with that, but nevertheless, it's a different experience from
When
wearing
if
shoes
you
to
want to
not
be
wearing shoes.
barefooted in Acapulco, you have to be very watchful under your feet, because there are caterpillars that have these little spikes on them with little dots that are poisonous, just a little poisonous, but not fun. And there are scorpions. And what else? At the market, there was meat water.
Tarantulas,
Step in that.
snakes,
Yeah, other spiders. I'm mostly scared of the meat water.
sea urchins.
Sea urchins.
The meat water?
When you walk in the farmer's market and there's like the meat department is washing up and there's all this water with the bits of meat that flows down. That's the stuff I don't want to step in. Like the scorpions and stuff, you can avoid that, but the meat water is a little ubiquitous.
I think,
especially with all the animals around, the stray animals and so forth that might want to lick your feet or eat your feet if
I think
it's tasty
the
enough.
cats at the meat market have a much better thing than my foot to lick, because there was fish and chicken and all sorts of things on the floor.
when I think of,
It was the health department's dream. No, go ahead. Sorry.
when have our senses been at the height of their development? Is it when we were born?
Born. No, because when you're first born, your senses are still dimmed a little bit, I think. You don't see so well.
Yeah, it's like a shock effect at that
You
point.
can't really grasp things,
So some of them seem to evolve, right? After we're born, after we come into this reality. And then
Certainly.
some of them, as you mentioned, Mike, also they seem to, dull down depending on the circumstances and surroundings, I guess, we grow in. And some of them, that might actually be something important in order for us to cope with certain circumstances, to actually be less sensitive, because it can be really overwhelming. I remember what was the name of Ross' son?
Gary.
Gary, yeah, that was interesting. Like he just came to my mind because we were talking about also his, heightened sense, or some of his senses being extremely, highly developed, but or certain conditions that will render people with to be super susceptible of certain senses, and then that can be easily that can be very overwhelming as well. If you perceive much more, if you're hearing, if you're able to perceive sound on a much better level than most of us, then it can be very overwhelming in our modern world, with the hustle and bustle and all the noise around. So I can see how that actually might be detrimental, or might actually not be very helpful in the surroundings that we find ourselves if we have highly developed senses. And on the other side, imagine if you would not develop some of those senses that we saw on the table that you shared, Agnieszka, then it seems like we will be, life would seem rather dull if we're not able to perceive, the world using all those senses that we have mentioned. That means that we're missing out on so much.
But does it really? Because I know that, like, for example, the children in Jamaica, right? They didn't have shoes. Did they miss shoes? No, they didn't miss shoes. They didn't even know shoes were a thing, right? They just walk around barefoot and they're happy about it.
Or they
And
knew
so-
very much, they wanted shoes very much. Some of them, they will do terrible things in order to get shoes, because they see and perceive shoes as something that you have to have in order to be cool, in order to be hip.
Status.
Status symbol.
Yeah.
And they see on TV, they see people on the roadside, and that was for some of them the most important thing to ever have, and they would have done God knows what. And you see people with the newest brand, or bling bling status symbols, or big cars, and that would be more important to them than sometimes basic food. They would do more for that than even, that would be more important to show off that they have that status, because that would give them a sense of self-worth. And that, of course, is then also a result of manipulation of media, of TV. If you wouldn't have exposure to that, then, like you said, then they wouldn't even have an idea of what that is. But I guess in our modern world, it's easy to know and easy to find out what you have or what you could have, even if you don't. And then that will raise a whole different perspective of luck, perceived luck.
Well, in regard to that is a kind of a demonstration of like what is repeated, what is consistent, is what people will want, or at least be aware of. And isn't that an interesting thing in regard to all these other things? Because, like you were saying, the awareness that we're capable of is something that could be much more exciting and much more interesting, but we're just not aware of it. And so the fact that we're not aware of it, and we're not consistently practicing it or doing it, leads to us not being able to see the value or the harm of what we're encountering now.
Yeah, the point of looking within, right? So the point of looking within instead of looking on the outside for things to satisfy, our perceived needs, and to find out that actually, those needs may arise, but we can actually satisfy the what we really and truly long for in the end by actually going within, and we don't have to look for those things on the outside. And the senses, that was very interesting about the 12 senses you shared earlier. Those were not only the senses that would allow us to interact or to perceive the material outside world, but they go much deeper than that. So I found that really interesting, that research went into that, and in that case, Steiner went, seemingly went very deep on that side. And then what I found is interesting also is the thought of, and you touched upon that, Mike, of depriving yourself of sensory stimuli in order to become more aware of it. And that's something, there's meditation techniques, there's people who would withdraw from, like even go like in a dark place for sometimes hours or even days, just to deprive yourself of all those possible sensory stimuli, in order then to look beyond the sensory input that we continuously get from our outside world. And if you look at people that might be challenged in some ways, like let's say blind people, then we can also perceive like how the balance of the lack of not being able to see with with a heightened sense of hearing, and with other senses of perception that are then heightened. And that is something that I've perceived as well, and I think, as you said before, we've lost that in our modern world, because we don't seem to need to develop those senses, because there's the high definition screen right there. It's all focused on just the seeing and hearing, and all those other senses, they seem to be dulled down by the influence of our modern day lives.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
I was just thinking about the times, ancient times, when people could read symbols, and there would be something carved into a tree or carved into a piece of wood attached to a tree, and they could correctly interpret a number of symbols from different alphabets. You know what I mean? They mixed alphabets back then, and people were capable of interpreting that. And these days, you throw some symbols in front of somebody, and they would have a hard time like deciphering what it means.
That's interesting, because what if you would have developed your senses to a degree that they will confirm the true nature of things, of the world, of the reality that we live in, as I say, as inside so outside. So if you have developed your senses to a degree that you could, resonate with, I don't know, the tree, you just mentioned the tree, and or the perceived other in the other human beings around you, the other beings around you, if you would be able to perceive through all your 2 dozen, however many senses, reality to that height, to that degree, then the experience on the outside would match what you could experience on the inside. That seems like an interesting view, an interesting perspective on that maybe if we are able to develop our senses to that degree, we actually can find exactly the mirror, the image of the inside mirrored on the outside, and so one would confirm the other, instead of one being seemingly way different from what truly is. So if we developed our senses, then how is it that we then can perceive the isness and the beingness of everything that is as outside, so on the inside? That's an interesting idea to me.
How do we do that? How do we observe the beingness outside and inside? Michael?
Well, I was just going to say that, there's that little comparison that I think is a meme that says they've got like the Nike logo and the Coca-Cola logo and, a couple of the other logos. And of course, everybody can identify those, but then they've got some leaves, different kinds of leaves of different kinds of trees, and nobody knows which one is which. But just think, if people had that awareness, if they could see, oh, that's an oak tree, or oh, that's a maple tree. That maple tree means there's maple syrup in there. That oak tree, that tree equals this kind of opportunity potential. Looking on the ground, seeing that there's plants that could indicate that, okay, this is edible. This means there's water close by. There's all kinds of things that are clues to what's actually going on in the world, what is valuable and what isn't. And for the most part, people that are raised up in the modern world, they're not able to see any of that. As far as they're concerned, it's all a desert outside of the supermarket, when it comes to food. And so
These children apparently couldn't even identify vegetables correctly.
Yeah, it's like
Like, a little
I don't doubt that.
it really reflects the kind of distortion, right, that's going on. Because even if we call it a maple tree, then and so that's language that's already adding words to the things that we can perceive. But as far as my little knowledge of language and the roots of that goes, then language as it used to be, or some of the most supposedly ancient languages, the vocals and the syllabus of the words that describe it, they have all of them have a vibration to it, but the vibration of the word of the sound would reflect the beingness of what you describe. And I feel that modern language is oftentimes distorted, far away from what it used to be. So then, by naming it, by saying, "Oh, this is an oak tree, this is a maple tree," then we're already distorting the thing from what it truly is. So maybe through translating it and through putting language and adding words to something that is, we're already missing the point. We're not connecting to it. So I don't know, like we study biology and we say, okay, this is that's the Latin name, that is that, and then we can name it and with specificity and with scientific backed research, but we missed to resonate with it. We missed to to feel it and to perceive it with all the other senses that we could perceive that tree or that whatever we name it thing is. And so I feel that developing our senses to the highest degree possible, that would then enable us actually to not just perceive it with our eyes or to just smell it, but holistically, right, with everything that we have, with all senses that we have, the more subtle ones and the gross ones, and perceive it as one, and without maybe even having the need to put a name or put a label to it, but just to vibrate or resonate with it on the heights of its own how you say, resonance or wavelengths, so to say.
Well, that's like one of the easily demonstratable things is like the text chat and people utilizing words to communicate without having that opportunity to understand like what the tone and the pitch and the rate and all the other things that go into when people say words. And so when they interpret the words on the piece of paper or on the text chat, they may not get the same inclination that the person that was actually saying the words were meaning.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Just by kind of utilizing that artificial thing, they're removing all this stuff that otherwise could be incredibly important to understanding the true nature of the words that are being said, or at least the intent of the words being said by the person that's actually sending the message.
And then it doesn't make sense. So things don't make sense again because there's no sense in it,
Amen. Agnieszka, is everything okay?
I was frozen for a minute. And then I went, "Oh no, who's frozen?" And then I realized it was just me.
Okay.
That's fine. As long as the shadow host is not frozen, that's all that matters. Right, Mr. Shadow Host?
I was just gonna say, wow, that is a unique sensory input in Acapulco, frozen Acapulco.
You don't get freezing much right now.
Well, there's ice cream.
Yeah, I guess we do have that.
Frozen stuff in the freezer.
So so like in regards, so like we've basically just talked about the sense of speech and how that can be artificially rendered to be much less useful via technology. But things like being able to see, the talent that Agnieszka has with her ability to see and read faces is something that we all inherently have as a subconscious trait, not necessarily a conscious trait.
Really.
But being conscious of that gives you a great deal more clues as to what people are actually really trying to say when they're saying things, and what they are presenting themselves in regard to their body about who they are and what are their concerns are.
It does give you a
And
different.
we've
Oh, sorry.
oh, I'm just going to say, yeah, so I just say we've for the most part, society is completely lost that ability, and that's a great deal of awareness that we're just letting go.
Yeah, and isn't it like if you would have a heightened perception or awareness of many or is of all your senses, so to say, then that doesn't that give you mm, you know, that freedom, that independence, and the assurance that you because it's like it's a different level of processing, right? If you can get input through your seeing, through your hearing, through the tasting, and through all those other senses at once, and they all they all confirm that, okay, I don't know, this is a maple tree. You can touch it, you can feel it on the inside, on the outside, and okay, wow. So you don't have to rely on, I don't know, your book or on somebody else in order to confirm, oh yeah, that's a maple tree, or this is this, or this is that, or this is Agnieszka, this is Mike. Then you there's a certain knowing then, or you can interact with your world from a more from a stronger foundation, because you yourself,
Yes.
you can, okay, I can see it, I can hear it, I can smell it, I can feel it, or my intuition says, okay, poof, oh, all right, and then you bounce it back, and then you process it. It's like having several inputs into your processing system, and then your system can work with more data, so to say, and therefore it can put out a more firm response, so to say, or the results can be more firm, and then that also means that you can be more sure of what you perceive, of what you're looking at, or of the world that you're moving into, and then you would depend less on the input, or on what other people or TVs or structures or entities are telling you, what what you're confronting and what you're seeing, and what your world is made of from, because you can perceive the world as you live in, within your own entity, with your own beingness. You don't need too much help from other people in order to actually know what's going on around you or perceive it.
But if everybody is covering their faces, how can you perceive the world as it really is?
Well, isn't that an example of kind of like losing or being confined in terms of your perception? So you cannot see the face again. So it's like, oh, what remains? The voice? No, not too much either, because you just see the mumbling. So in a way, that is a real life challenge right now, isn't it? To see what else can is there something else coming across, because I can't see the face, I can't really hear the voice too good. So is there something else?
Not able to hear, like Josh Hogarth, like he had to go through that whole ordeal of losing a job because he couldn't understand anybody who covered their face and spoke. Sad but true.
And it challenged him, right? It challenged him to then, that's what I remember, and that's what I got out of the interview that we did with him. It challenged him to develop, or to focus on, to heighten his awareness of what he actually could do well, and of where he was doing well. So that situation seemed to have actually, in a way, helped him to identify what he's actually really good at. And and that would have just gone by, or because if he would have continued to gotten the monthly paycheck, and so then he wouldn't really have had a need to focus on that, and maybe that was an opportunity, and maybe that makes much more sense now for him to actually see, oh wow, that situation, that was really great, I felt wonderful, and I helped this boy.
Maybe another 6 months, because he's just starting out. But yeah, I remember that feeling, like, if I don't have this paycheck every 2 weeks, what will happen to me? Will I die?
Well, and I think it also speaks to, like, the people that do have senses that are removed, for whatever reason, and so that deprivation leads to a acute, like a a rise of their other senses. Those are experiences that we, as the rest of the humanity, can actually benefit from by their experience, their understanding of their particular senses. And really, that's, I think, one of the areas that certainly needs a lot of exploration is the diversity of the people that we have in regard to the sensory perceptions that are out there. These are all things that we could be exploring to really enhance a greater awareness, but that's certainly not something that anybody's doing. That all those experiences are potentially greater awareness. And the fact that we're basically just saying, they're special people, put them in the closet over here, put them in this room over here, put them in that that place over there where all those people go.
But
By
you know,
doing that,
go ahead.
we're totally wrecking that potential.
Yeah.
What if that's their experience? What if that's how they want to experience life? It's true, hands tied behind your back, hobbled feet, moving through the grind.
I don't think that's. I think every experience is worth looking into, understanding, and that's why we need to be really respecting each other, because each person's experience is valuable. And yeah, if you've got people that want to bind their feet because there's something potentially valuable in doing that,
Metaphorically, that the situation might bind your feet and tie your hands up because you're not able to do all the things that you're supposed to or you want to be doing because there are certain limitations in place.
But that's kind of what modern society is doing. It's binding our senses in many different ways. And are we really aware of, like, hey, you don't have to wear those, you don't have to put those things on your feet like that. What, like, what would be the, like,
but
what
also the
kind
other
of experiences could we be having if we're not binding ourselves with all this technology and stuff?
But if you think about it, sorry, Dennis.
And how can we train ourselves to learn or to relearn and to re-experience the world through a heightened awareness of those senses? And I remember, like, one thing comes to my mind, which is actually here in my hometown, where they have like it's actually called like a sensory playground, something like that. It's primarily for children, but also like for adults, and you can go there, and there's different areas, and it's like a huge playground, and some are like about water, the other ones is about sound, the other ones about the touching, and then so school classes go there, and they spend a day there, and you have different exercises and different ways of just heightening your awareness and feeling, touching, hearing, listening, and that's something interesting, because that kind of trains you, and that points you at what is not our daily experience, again, wearing shoes all day, being under several layers of clothes, and not experiencing the natural world as we probably were meant to be originally. And then there's also, I think there's a restaurant here as well, where it's completely black, pitch black dark, and that is meant to let you experience the world of a blind person, even if for an hour, 2 or 3 hours, and having dinner, only being served and ordering, and like being in a restaurant which is completely dark, in darkness. And I haven't been there, but I've heard many interesting things about that. So what other ways are there? How can we train ourselves and maybe purposefully deprive ourselves of certain sensory inputs in order then to become aware of our true potential, or at least scratch on it a little more?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's definitely the opportunity that we can incorporate practices into our daily lives that could potentially open up a lot of those things, open up a lot of those potential awarenesses that could really change our perception and our perspective greatly about the value that each of us represents. And again, I think that is really one of the key things that maybe we can bring out of this, is that really it is the diversity of our senses. It's the diversity of the people and their ability to use their senses that really gives us the greater awareness of what is actually really going on. And in absence of that, when we basically we all have this similar experience where we're all going to be online, we're all going to be sitting at our desks, not really having a real interaction with the real world. What is that going to do? If we do that for another 50 years, what are people going to be like 50 years from now if they sit in front of their computers and just talk to each other and don't leave their houses for the next 50 years? What kind of humanity is that going to be? And what are we trading? What are they, are they even going to know what they could potentially trade for in experiences that they otherwise wouldn't even know about?
It would mean to numb ourselves down. Sorry, go ahead, Alicia.
That's true about us too. People 500 years ago had totally different experiences, and they see us as deprived as we see the next people. It's almost like something is tightening and making the windows smaller and smaller, but that's also its own type of challenge, right?
And what comes along also
well,
is
I think that's
if you have a world that is even further. If we live in a world and we perceive the continuous numbing down of our world, of people living in that world, then what necessarily comes along with it is also the perception of that. As we are right now perceiving, it's like, oh, it's getting worse and worse. People don't, children don't know what's a potato from a zucchini, and like we like eyes getting worse, and God knows, like, so we're numbing down ourselves even furthermore. So at the same time, we perceive that it already, it has on its tail in the back end, it has the hold on, I'm perceiving it's getting worse. So, and even if it's just a handful or two handful of people who become more aware of that, and then actually consciously will try to evolve and will try to reverse that and tap into their potential. So the detrimental tendency on one side always, in a way, backfires to the other side as well. And it might not be the majority or all of people, but there will always be some who will learn from that and who will perceive it and then try to move the other way and do that in a way that maybe before the detrimental tendencies, took overhand, wasn't possible, because then it wasn't necessary to become even conscious about it. It's only, when the thing hits the fan that you perceive, there's something flying towards me, so maybe I should duck, or I should, I don't know, pull the plug of the fan so it doesn't fly towards me. But you wouldn't have done it before because it wasn't disturbing you, because nothing came flying towards you, through the wind, if that makes sense. I just see, and I'm gonna fulfill my duty here of checking the comments. And there's a mystical member of our audience today called Sam I Am, and he or she says, "This makes me wonder."
I think that's the guy who's been here before.
This makes me wonder what senses are being activated when people have anxiety attacks for no perceivable reason. Well,
certainly that's that. I think in some cases it's people's like it could potentially be like they have sensitivity to certain senses that they're just not acclimated to, and people think that that's weird to feel that way, and so for them it always basically comes off as making them feel weird. I mean, that just one potential there, but it certainly could make people feel anxious if they've got things that, like, they say, oh, well, that's not normal. You've got a sixth sense and that's not normal. You're not normal. That kind of stuff in this society.
Or even better,
very...
you don't have a sixth sense. I don't have it, therefore you don't have it. You couldn't possibly have something I haven't got.
So
right,
you could see it that way. but then you could take that as an incentive and say, wow, how amazing is that? Well, I wasn't, I thought that was like a thing of movies, but now I met this man, or I met this woman, and he's like, with one look in my eyes, like he or she could perceive where I'm right now. Oh, wow, like, I just shook his hand and he could tell me, where I was centered, and, what's going on energetically with me, or like he could read my emotions just by the way I was, walking, or he just got the vibe and told me something that's like, even I myself wasn't aware of that, but it's totally true. So, you can how yourself belittle yourself and say, oh my god, that's just, that's a special thing and whatever, I will never have it. Or you could see, wow, that's amazing, that's a possibility, wow, interesting, how did you, how
Do
did you
it.
develop that, how did you do it? And wow, that's amazing. Even I don't have to, match you or be the same or so, but is there potential within me? How can I, how can I dig down to it? How can I develop that? How can I bring that forward and, develop that kind of excitement of what's possible? And I feel, we are not, how would you say? I almost said we are not all the same, which is not what truly
That's
is,
wrong way to say.
but we are unique. We come here with unique abilities, and also with, with our very own baggage, and we talked about that many many moons ago. So so there's luggage that we carry here, which is, which is making us, our experience unique. But at the bottom, there's a connection, and there's the, people say the divine spark, is within each one, and within each and every one of us, and so there's this uniqueness, within all of us, and we can use that, and we have to find out how, what is our very own way, what is what makes sense for us in this life, and I feel that is very very intimately related to how we develop our senses, because that then will determine how we interact with the world and with the reality that we're moving in, and to recognize that, that oneness, which is inside of each and every one, and to also recognize that at the same time, we are the same, but also, we are, so there's this oneness within diversity, and one doesn't, exclude the other one. So both of them is possible, and we can play the game. We're thrown in this game, so let's play the game, and let's take the challenge and play it in a good way, but without, being completely involved in it. So let's use the senses. That's what I'm really saying. Let's use the senses as best as we can do, so we can play the best game ever, and be joyful and develop ourselves to the fullest, and contribute to our world.
Well, I've got a great example. Just this past week, Agnieszka and Gabriel are here, sharing my experience here in Acapulco now. And one of the things they've brought to my attention is in regard to taste. I've tried a whole lot of new foods here in the past week or so, and not necessarily foods that I am not familiar with, but foods I'm familiar with that I haven't tasted in the same way, because really just having a discussion with them about like hot food, for example, spicy food. I've always considered myself somebody that I don't like spicy food. At least that's what I've told myself. But when we had a discussion about spicy food and then the differences in taste and how we can kind of increase the tolerance to things like spicy food, and then how that can create a much more acute sense of taste, my whole attitude towards tasting hot food changed. I mean, just in that conversation alone. And then when I started eating a little bit more hot food, I I was just paying more attention to my sense of taste and really having a much more rich experience eating food that I've never had before, simply because I decided to change my sense or change my perception of my senses in that little bit. It made a big difference.
And that's interesting because it means that you would have you would have made up your mind before, so you would not have been open. That's what I'm hearing. To what is actually out there, but you would kind of have meditated basically, like how it tastes, how it feels, how it looks, to
Yeah.
just broaden it, without actually really going out there and tasting it, and being in the moment and tasting, oh, what does this do to me? How does this affect me on all levels that I really have? But you said, oh no, I don't like spicy food. That's not good for me. So when you were like challenged to to actually try again, then you found out, oh, that's a whole different thing. And that's interesting, because that means we are able to rediscover the world that we live in, and to reevaluate, and to by sharpening our senses and our perception of the world that we move in, actually, maybe we discover a world that was there all the while before, but we haven't been able to perceive it because we weren't able to tap into that vibration, so to say.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's really the key to kind of unlocking our own freedom as well, is because as we start to share a greater awareness and experience, we end up finding things that otherwise people just don't see. And those are avenues towards communicating value that otherwise are just completely invisible at this point, because nobody's perceiving them, or nobody is comfortable enough to say that they're perceiving them.
But that's what your course is all about, right, Michael? Like your course, Ethical Emergence, that's all about like stepping into possibility, opening your senses, broadening your horizons, creating new possibilities. That's exactly what it is, right?
Yeah, to some degree, it is true. And honestly, this is something that I was thinking about incorporating into the Ethical Emergence course at the beginning stage, is some of these exercises.
Can you practice your 5-minute spiel about the course for our listeners right here, right now? Is that too much of a challenge?
Well, I've been trying to kind of come up with some sound bites about this. So we've been working on this for the past few days, weeks, months, years, and really intensely here in the last day or two. But, I would say that probably the best description that I've heard lately is this idea of perceiving, a greater future, the potential, perceiving your potential in a way in which you can incorporate it into your life today, through habits and practices. So seeing what may be valuable.
My interest waves. I want fun, excitement, adventure. Habits sounds so head. Yeah. But essentially, with the tasting spicy food, that's a habit where you up the dose every single time a little bit in order to be more open to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a perfect example of what we're trying to do in every sense with Ethical Emergence, is really just little by little, incrementally taking you from one place to somewhere else. Where, like with eating hot or spicy foods, at first you're saying, no, I don't want anything to do with that. That's harmful. It's painful to me to eat that food. I don't want to do it. To, hold on, if I do a little bit of pain each day, then I actually like increase the potential that my palate has in regard to the exposure to new taste that might actually be very enjoyable taste that I've just completely written off.
You're not supposed to eat spicy foods enough to cause you pain. Just spicy food to push your boundary a tiny little bit, not pain.
So what you're saying is that the course basically is helping you to overcome those self-imposed limitations, really. Those, there's like a mental thing that oh no, it can't taste good. Oh no, 5 years ago I tasted it and it wasn't good. So that means until the end of the days it's not good. So we kind of learn to identify and overcome those limitations that really we ourselves, put upon ourselves, which is interesting again, which matches again with the concept of Lila, the divine play, which is like, oh, so that which is unlimited, out of a playful nature, is limiting itself, in this, reality, in this, through this body, through this, vehicle that, that we are expressing ourselves, or it expresses itself in a limited way, in order for us then to rediscover our true nature, our unlimited beingness inside of the limited one. And then, of course, we have to accept the limitations that are given to us in this reality. But yet, if we know and if we can sense that we are something that goes beyond that we are bigger than, the flesh and the blood, and bigger than, the world as we perceive it, or most of us perceive it right now, then, there's really, there's this freedom that lies right here, like inside of us, right here and right now. And,
Right.
we can focus on it, and we can tune into it if you want. We can turn our tune on the frequency of that freedom, signal, and resonate with it.
Yeah, and I think there's that idea of choice. Like when we have alternatives in regard to what our actions are, we have the ability to make choices. And certainly as we make those choices, we learn from those experiences. And learning from those experiences, we gain confidence in what we're doing as being good or bad, and so forth. Obviously the ethical component, but um, as we gain experience, we also gain confidence, and confidence is really, from my understanding, kind of another representation of trust in ourselves and trust in other people. And so there again is, kind of one of the things about ethical emergence is really kind of creating an environment around yourself that's not just you, it's the people around you as well that really make up your experience. And so creating and understanding that you play a part in that environment of those other people that are in your life, there's a great deal of choices to be made. And the more choices that you make that are in your control, that can be beneficial, the more beneficial the whole environment becomes, not only for yourself but for the other people as well.
So through those choices, we're able to influence and change the nature of the game, and make it more enjoyable or make it less enjoyable. And then our body is like a biological feedback mechanism, like our well-being, whether it's emotional, mental, or physiological as well, is kind of like this live feedback mechanism where we can see, if we perceive, again, if we use our senses to perceive that, it's like, okay, this does well for me, or this is not, this doesn't feel right, or no, there's pain, or I put my hand in the fire, or it burns, so it's like a real-time feedback mechanism. And if you go even beyond, us learning, evolving, stepping forward, developing, senses, and if you go like one, if we enlarge the vision, and if we step back one more, then whatever experiences we have, and however much we grow, or then also we limit ourselves, that is also within the framework of that which is already, which knows all, which perceives all, which is all beingness. So within that framework, it's like it's senseless, because there is no need to do anything really, to grow, to learn, so because it's all there already. But yet,
omniscient.
so there is no true need from that perspective to evolve, or to do anything, or to develop, or to learn anything. But at the same time, we have the freedom, as you said, to do so, and we have the freedom to play in this game, and basically steer it in the direction that we see fit, and have the experiences that we enjoy having, hopefully.
Yeah, and I think there's certainly opportunity there. Certainly for people that are entrepreneurial, being able to see value in things like, taste is like the one we're talking about now, or we have been, but just being able to deliver new taste to people in a way that gives them a greater awareness of like what is quality, what is value, and what can be delivered, to them in regard to what you serve them for food could make a huge difference in people's lives. And certainly that's something that for an entrepreneur, that's one of the key things. But in regard to all these senses, these are all opportunities, because these senses are being diminished. That just, to me, that just means, that's a big problem, but it's also a big opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. Making adventure a habit is another comment from Sam I am. And that's an interesting one,
Very smart
definitely.
dude, that one.
So, say it again, Agnieszka.
He's a very smart guy, that Sam I am. Always very poignant.
Yeah. You said earlier that you love adventure. You don't like, what did you say, like habits and repetition and
Practice.
practice. Yeah. But isn't that like, so that would be a challenge maybe for you. It sounds like if you have, a steady practice, and to find adventure in that, to find adventure in the mundane and the repetitive one, and to see like, whoa, oh, what is my mind saying again? It's saying it's not nice, it's
did
not
that
challenging. It's
once.
like, oh, that the adventure is in that as well, right? You can find it even in those mundane, like
One
boring things.
time, every summer, I went to the same place for 4 years in a row. The same place, the same campsite. Every summer. It was the most extreme example of doing the same thing all the time to me. And it was very interesting because every time it was different. It wasn't the same. It was the same thing I did every year, but it was different. It was deeper. One day there were these bugs, and another year there were different bugs there. You couldn't say, oh yeah, that's the place with the weird bugs, because there were different bugs. Very interesting. Learning about seasonal lives of bugs. Hey, Michael, you can turn that light up a little bit more, because as you move away from the light, it's not as bright. See, now it's perfect, but then you lean back, and it's not as perfect. See, that's better.
All right.
Now for my
I'm working on it. Trying to figure it out here.
Okay.
Well, I want to try and touch on each of these different senses, and maybe get a little bit of interpretation from you guys on what these could mean for people in regard to really examining these senses, and seeing, maybe, is there opportunities for people to look into these more, practice them more, incorporate them more into their routines, so that maybe they do, like, this is the way that they could reconnect or disconnect from the way things are, and connect into something that's more driven by their own individual desires and interests. But one of those was ego, and I've got a different description, but it says this is the sense of ego, or I, which enables us to turn our thinking towards the being of another, and to behold their I, their unique individuality directly. I don't know if that explains it any better, but what are your thoughts on a sense of ego?
Well, that is really the vehicle through which we're expressing ourselves. Right? What I earlier said was the limited expression. So that's, that is the unlimited, limiting itself through that ego. So that's your personality. That's your unique, expression in these realms, in this reality, and that enables you. At first glance, maybe it looks like you're different from me, and we're different from each other. We look, we sound, we do, diverse things, so to say, and that that limitation enables us a unique journey and a unique perception through our senses, then, of the world that we're moving in. So it is like, wow, if if I even attempt to imagine what it would feel, or what it would be like being the all omniscient beingness, then I probably wouldn't feel no need, because I would be everywhere, everlasting, ever being. So the fun part would be to limit myself, and then to be able to look, from all different kind of angles, but within limitation, basically, and perceiving the play of the world, the play of things, consciousness, through the eyes of limited beings. Then.
But that's exactly what you did. You were omniscient, you were everything, and you have squeezed yourself into a tiny genie bottle called Dennis. But you're still the genie. No? And I made the room silent. Oh, it was a fun day at the farmer's market the other day. There were avocados, star fruit, watermelons.
Well, in regard to what Dennis said, I could identify myself, like part of my ego could be, I don't like spicy food, or I don't handle spicy food well, but that's changed.
Like that, and you can't change me.
So was that part of my ego? Was that part of the perception of who I am? Was the guy that doesn't like spicy food? But now I'm changing. So have I changed my ego, or has my experience I just grown my experience to a larger ego?
But if the ego is the thing that lets you step up in the world and at the same time protects you from harm, like there are so many different definitions of what ego is, right? But if the ego protects you from harm, then it'll always tell you that a new experience is going to be bad. You're going to have, like, with the spicy food, you're going to have heartburn. It's going to suck. Your bum's going to hurt when you go poop. It's not going to be worth it. It's just bad. Don't do it. You've never liked it. You're never going to like it again. Remember that bad experience when you were 12? It's going to be like that every time, right? Yeah. And so that's the ego protecting you from harm. And so then if you tell the ego, like, you know what, but just let's do it once. It's not a big deal, I'll make sure that you have a lot of hot dogs or whatever that you like, that you perceive as safe. And then we're going to give you something new, something different, but only sometimes, not all the time. And then the ego might go, okay, but only sometimes. Let's try it. Let's see if we die. But if we die, I'm going to hold you responsible. Right.
Well, I mean, I feel the harm is not even right. The situation is that if you identify with it fully, then if you cannot see the ego for what it is, which is an expression in this illusionary world, so it's the vehicle that transports you there. So you are that, like it's a role that you're playing, and as you said, so there's possibilities of changing that role, of assuming new roles. We're all playing roles. Or I'm the father, the teacher, I don't know, the podcast host right now. So those are different roles, and these things are changing as well. So those things that keep on changing, that's not true reality. That's the perception of it. So we can change the ego. Is that something that changed? Has that always been? No, it changed. Yesterday was something else. Today is, tomorrow will be something else again. So it is not to disregard it, because it has its role also. Oftentimes people say, oh, it's the ego, it's bad. I don't feel it's bad. That's just a label again as well. It is, is the form of expression, is your personhood basically, and through your personhood you can express yourself in these realms where we are. But the problem is if you fail to see that you are more than just the ego. So if you feel that's all I am, I don't know, the manager or the garbage man in the street, and then if anybody tells you, no, you're not that, and you're a fool, or you lose your job, then you feel like, oh, I'm nobody again because I lost my job as a manager or as a garbage man, because you had identified solely with that, and all your sense of beingness, your sense of beingness was identified with, a job or with a name that your mommy and daddy gave you, before you maybe even, slide into the physical realm of those things. But those are associations, like the example of the suit that we are wearing, or the vehicle that we're driving. But we are not the suit, and we are not the vehicle, but we are the one who is wearing it. We are the one, the driver of the vehicle. So if we fail to see beyond ego, then we'll go through more lessons and lessons until we eventually will see that there is more beyond that.
All right, I've got another one because I know Agnieszka's got a great story for this one. It's the sense of warmth, and in my description it says, with this sense we are aware directly of the warmth of another body. But I think it's just like the warmth in expression as well. That you know, we got some stuff delivered today. And Agnieszka, you want to tell that story?
Well, so I wanted a driver that would be available in the mornings. Michael already has a driver that's available in the evenings. And is that what you're telling? That's the story? That's
Yes.
the story, right? And so we asked him to buy us some freshly squeezed juice, because it's a Mexico thing where they bring you these really big cups of freshly squeezed juice and some water. And then he came and he brought us some fruit salad, like extra, because he wanted to express his gratitude and how much he appreciated the business that we've given him over the weekend, and how great the customers we are. And so he like went above and beyond, and he was super sweet. And then he said it was an honor helping us out. And so, I mean, that's a symbiotic relationship, as symbiotic as they come, I would say, right? Because we need him and he needs us just as badly. And we're just like so happy to have each other.
I was hoping you would read a little of that little note he sent to you that was so freaking touching. I mean, we're talking about a driver here, but you know, I think that it was just such a warm connection, and certainly something that I do hit on with ethical emergence when it comes to like meaningful communication is, you know, every time that we communicate with other people, every instance where we're communicating with other people, we have the opportunity to make a choice about what that communication is going to be. Is it going to be just, you know, yes, no, give me that, I want this, that kind of stuff? Or is it going to be, you know, hey, how's your life doing? Is this a good experience for you? How can I help you out and make this better? You know, there's a whole lot of opportunities when it comes to connecting with other people that we have the opportunity to affect in a positive or negative way. And for the most part, if we're not intentionally making it positive, we could potentially be making it negative. And so he's got a great example.
So his name is Fernando, and the way we talk is I text him in English and he puts it in Google Translator and he reads it in Spanish, and then he replies to me in Spanish and I put it in Google Translator and reply in English. So I had to scroll through a whole big list of Spanish messages to find the one that was the right one. But this is the one he sent this morning after he dropped off the fruit salad that he bought with his own money because he just loves us so much. He said, really, with all my heart, thank you very much. God put me on your path, and I thank you for all your attention toward me. I cannot find words enough to thank you for your trust. Like, he's been working for us for 3 days, and yeah, sure, we've recommended him to like 5 other friends, but but we just want to help the guy out. I mean, he is so sweet and so kind and so fatherly and so caring that, you know, I don't know, it's a benefit, it's a pleasure to give him money. You know what I mean? He's just such a great dude.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, that's an opportunity that we have to kind of express our warmth to each other, to sense the warmth that we have in each other, and really kind of make each other's life better.
The first job we hired him for was to get some people were drunk and they were at our house and they were too drunk, and we were like, oh, can you like take these people away, drive them home, right? That was the first job that we gave him, even the day before we had arranged already to go on the first thing. We're like, oh, okay, we have this weird situation. And the next day I was apologizing, saying, I'm so sorry. You know, I would normally not ask you, and these people were drunk and so sorry. And he's like, if there's ever anybody at your house that you need removed, I will be there, and you don't have to worry about my safety. I worry about your safety. And it was he speaks with such strong sentences, you know, like I'm there for you. And it feels like, you know, it feels like family already, even though I've known him since Friday. They think that's the magic of Mexico. Like I'm getting over Clint because he was so sweet. So.
Yeah.
Nice. And that kind of, to tap into that kind of warmth and, you know, heartfelt, emotional connection.
Love. It's love.
That
We're
is,
showering each other with love. We're giving him tips. He's bringing us fruit salad. It's all love.
especially in these times. And again, and that's, I think, a perfect example of, you know, when things seem to be getting cold and, you know, don't show emotions and, you know, the elbow left and right in order to survive and, you know, fight flight mode and, you know, don't care about that. Then you see how much of a difference it can make if you tap into that energy and if you open up, you know, your heart and your emotional center and because it takes one who is open to perceive that, and it takes another one also, you know, to be able to resonate on that level. And yeah, it you know, that in itself changed your perception of life in a moment, right? And it's not something that wasn't there. It theoretically it was available all the time. You know, we have that opportunity. I would suggest all of us, although it might seem a little further down, hidden among many more layers of the onion with some people than others, but that's natural as well. But it's certainly an opportunity there for all of us to develop that and to tap further into that experience.
And you don't know this yet, Michael, but tomorrow our wonderful, amazing driver is bringing us dinner for everybody because that his wife is going to make, because he wants to express how awesome we are. So
Gotta love it. Gotta love it.
Tell him to make it spicy for Mike now.
Just a little. I can add a little spice on the
that's
side.
what I said. Make it a little spicy, not too spicy, but a little spicy. So yeah, it's been a wonderful experience. But it is love, you know. I mean, I've spent many months, you know, in Canada, isolated in the woods, in a little house, just going to the grocery store and back. And here to be surrounded with such love, you know, just even the people who stop by and everybody, it's just so lovely.
Does make for a wonderful atmosphere. And that's kind of what I'm talking about, is that, you know, I think we have the opportunity to really change the environment around us. And it's really just a choice that we make. And it doesn't necessarily have to do anything with anybody else or any authorities or what they say or whatever. It's really just, it's just us.
And that really is a great example, right? Because not too long ago we talked about traveling, and so by changing your outside environment, you challenge yourself to recognize and to be more aware of your senses, right? It's new smell, new sights, new people, new perceptions, and that is also a way of kind of reconnecting and maybe sharpening your senses from you know, from that perspective. So you change your outside reality, and then you see, oh, there's a reflection on the inside. And what happened to me was that I was able to, by drastically changing, you know, the culture and the place I surrounded myself with and the people and language and all of that, I perceived after a certain number of years, I perceived those things that I thought were more present in the other place. I became more aware that they actually were present in the same place where I came from as well, just in a different way. You know, so they are hidden, or I wasn't perceiving them as much because I was born and I grew with them and I took them for granted and I never had to focus in it. And I just saw them expressed, you know, in a different way, you know, from a different, you know, cultural angle, so to say. But I found, you know, that which in the beginning I thought, oh, this is so much better here because it's not there. I said, oh, when I went back, it's like, oh, it's here as well. It's just, you know, it's it's a different, like seeing the world through a different ego. you know, like, so it's tainted,
Yeah.
or it's
Or different egregor, maybe.
yeah, you know, like, you might see, you know, better than me, or I may hear something that you can't hear, you know. So it's like, it's through that, but the ultimate expression of what we're perceiving, it's still there, and we have the ability, you know, to sharpen our eyes, or, you know, to put on glasses, or you know, to put in a hearing aid or so, and to manipulate our sensory input, and we have the opportunity to tap into that which is there, which is true reality, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that you know, in regard to hearing, you know, when we're over stimulated, like you've got your headphones on and it's blaring some kind of music, you can't hear the bus that's coming up behind you beeping the horn saying, "Get out of the way, my brakes are gone," you know, because you've created that circumstance in which you just don't know any better. And I think to a large degree, a lot of the things that is going on in the world are in that kind of fashion. They're basically overstimulating people to the point that they can't understand, or they can't sense anything else. And to a large degree, that is very traumatic. But the opposite of that is to take that away, to take away that particular thing, and revisit your senses and see what actually you can precisely determine with the senses that you have, and then potentially grow from there to a much greater opportunity. Because I think, like within the group that we have, we've got some people that have a well developed sense of different things that can give us some guidance as to how we might be able to perceive things differently, or at least, you know, like with the taste, just increase that spiciness just a little bit each day, to the point that you have a new perception of what is possible, what is my palate, what can I taste, what do I really enjoy, all those kind of things. It's not just one sense, maybe 12, maybe it's 24, maybe it's a million, who knows. But if we don't get started down that path, we're never going to know. We're never going to really experience the life that we have possible if we don't utilize the tools that we have been given.
And the funny thing is that even though, you know, we put on our headphones and blast the music, and we don't hear the boss, and we do, you know, we completely numb down ourselves by choice because we may be overwhelmed or for whatever reason, it's still eventually it's gonna come around full circle, and we're still gonna cut through, and, you know, and in the end, the goal or the end result is gonna be the same, and which is, you know, some people say that's liberation, that's the freedom which is guaranteed to all of us, you know. Just, you know, some take a shortcut and some take a longer while, but the funny thing is that, you know, whatever we do, in the end it's the same result, just through through the paths that we take and the choices that we make. We basically determine, you know, the nature of the ride. You know, is it going to be a smooth ride? Is it going to be quick? Is it going to be like a longer one? Is it going to hurt, or is it going to be, you know, more based into joy? And but in the end, it's going to come around full circle, because I don't know, maybe the boss come and licks us down, and we wake up, and, you know, and we have, you know, an epiphany, and we have certain understandings that we would not have had without the boss coming knocking us down. So whether we numb ourselves down, or whether we, you know, do our best to do everything right and to take the shortcut, life in the end, you know, grants us the same result, basically.
Well, I would just say the shortcut is the idea that I think we can exist in a much higher level of consciousness today rather than whenever.
And that's
we
what
have that
12
capability.
week course is about. Higher level of consciousness in 12 weeks.
Oh,
That's a
Shambhavi saying hi.
That could be-
Hey, Shambhavi, how you doing?
Shambhavi.
She's saying hi,
Yeah.
Agnieszka. Then is Mike, and she's
Mhm.
saying hello from Seychelles in British Columbia.
Ah,
That
Lovely.
seems to be an amazing place.
I think we could maybe close out this popsicle stand, hey?
That is it. We
But
are
Shambhavi,
out
you
of
should
time.
listen to the replay.
Yeah, it was. I thought this was a great discussion. I know it was kind of last minute, but I think we hit on some really
We're not supposed to
important
tell our
stuff.
listeners that it's last minute. They wouldn't
Okay,
have known
well.
otherwise.
Well,
It was a good
as
discussion.
far as we're concerned, I think it was a good discussion. I think we went some good places. I hope our audience got something out of it, and I certainly thank you for your time and attention.
Yes.
We are here on Mondays and Wednesdays, 5:35 p.m. Eastern time, 2:35 Pacific time. And
Yeah.
do we have any idea of what we're going to do next? It's going to be a surprise.
It will make sense.
We'll see you on Wednesday then.
We'll make sense of your senses. Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Oh, I'm not the
Until
shadow
again.
host. It's Dennis.
Yeah, man. So Wednesday again with another exciting topic. Looking forward to your comments and input. And yes, thank you, Agnieszka. Thank you, Mike. It was a pleasure. Looking forward to next time. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.